Dennis, welcome back. We've been on a hiatus.
We have. It's been.
How high was your hiatus?
Yeah. Well, stories could be told, but it was, for me, it was about sun, surf, music, and beer.
Sun, surf, music, and beer.
Yes. It's
SSMB. Yep.
Yeah. So it was 75. The last day we left, it was 77, near the all-time high of 81.
Damn.
And we went to
December.
A little town, a little mallish looking little town called Hempstead, just off the beach, about a mile from the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Crossed over the bridge, over the Intercoastal Waterway to the sliver of island that is Topsail Island.
Yep.
And if we went right, we drove way down and got to a place near the Intercoastal Waterway where there was free parking.
Yeah.
And a picture of which I showed you in this magnificent opening of Intercoastal Waterway where there was no housing and it was public access. And so when we walked down into that beautiful, sunny, warm, sandy area and waited at low tide, knee deep, and cast out some 25 yards with a heavy, plasticky kind of real curlicue tail looking rubber thing called, as we'll have to get a picture to you, but it's the color is called Christmas tail with a bubblegum twisty tail. And the twisty tail is this long rubber thing that even when your weight, your hook, which is your weight, and your little rubber thing that you attach to the hook that looks like a giant worm, even when that's on the bottom, this curly tail in the current floats up above it. And so the fish go at it.
This is increasingly a fishing podcast.
It is.
Welcome back to Fishing Hour.
Yes, but in this case, Topsail Island. And so what was so much fun is that when we were rolling, about every third cast, we would catch a fish. And that fish was a speckled sea trout, whose legal limit size is 14. And we caught 60 of them, all but probably 3 or 4 under 16 inches. So
Wow.
they were small, but they were plentiful. And at one point there were...
Can you hear that rain? It's coming down right now. Anyway, sorry.
Oh, no, I can't.
Okay.
But anyway, at one point, all 3 of us catching fish lined up, all fishing about the same depth, fish after fish. Danny caught a flounder. Both he and John each caught a blue. And I caught nothing but trout all day. First day I pulled in 17. The other boys pulled in 9 and 7. And the second day I tied my first day of 17. John brought in 14 and Danny brought in like 9. So it was and it was so warm, and this warm breeze, and I'm in my shorts and gym shoes up to my knees in the water. Tide goes out. I walk.
Is that good for your gym shoes?
You know what? The least of my worries. They're downstairs washed and drying. So, they were fine.
Okay.
And full of sand. And that was one of 2 fishing trips we took while I was there. And then the other time we played music for 4 hours.
Yep.
For the entire open mic. And then the next day at a acoustic round.
So at an open mic, is it okay if you just like bogart the mic like that?
In this case, it's set up for a band, and there's 4 mics, a keyboard with a mic and a computer lyrics on top of it, 2 mic stands, a drummer with a mic. So it's all mic'd up and on a space that's big enough easily for 5 guys to stand. And so there was never, was what you up there and there's a guitar player, and presumably if the guitar player doesn't know the tune you're playing, you can't play the tune. That's all there is to it. I can play anything because of the harmonica. So the drummer can go along and the bass can go along, but the guitar player or
kind of need to know
player, lead musician. And so it's often the case where you say, okay, you got something? They say, yeah. And so then you just ask a key. And then, of course, if it's me, I just follow along and he'll start and the bass player will hear the riff and catch up. And then the drummer will jump in. They had this electric drum kit that was the size of a large bongo. And it was divided up into sections. And when you tapped it with your hand, it sounded like any one of a number of drums and cymbals and whatnot. It was the coolest thing. Just using your fingers.
Technology, man.
So I'm the dude who was organizing. His name is Bernie, who owns the Shout Out here to the second row in Topsail. This was his last open mic besides one in Christmas, and then he's closing. So the number of musicians, which was a large number of musicians.
You had a weekend at Bernie's?
Yeah, that's right. And his wife, Marie, And they had a beautiful amber beer in a bottle called Rabbit and the Hound, maybe. It was a strange name. I can't remember it, actually. We probably have a picture. And fun time was had by all, man. It was just, and we all had the best time. We ate and bought some seafood and cooked it up in the oven, cooked some salmon and shrimps. And
Yeah, baby.
Next night, some big old tuna steaks and scallops, big salads. It was it, and it turned 68. You know, I mean, it was
Happy birthday.
And thank you for your birthday message. I did receive it.
A day late, but
The day I received it.
I mean,
I realized later that I had missed a phone call from you, which was an unusual event.
I know, right?
Highly unusual, and I missed it. And this was the thing: I was probably fishing.
You were in
Anyway,
bed. You were in bed hungover. Come on.
no, we were in bed each night by 10 or 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Just started out at 6, but a fine time was had by. It was good to see my old bros. So
Lovely.
happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday to half of this podcast. That's great to hear. I'm very pleased with your.
And the air flights were COVID sound and not terrible. We were in an airplane, one of 2 airplanes, for total wheels up to wheels down of about 3 hours, probably hour and a half, maybe a little
Right.
more than that. Not too bad. Had good seats. I played poker at a table of 7 for the last flight, 2 hours. And I
on
beat
the
everyone.
in-flight thing.
Yes. And I beat everyone at the table 7 times in a row. And I ended up with $21,000. I started with 300 and I ended up with $21,000.
Yes. Too bad they are fake dollars.
Yes. And
Airline
what was
dollars.
interesting was at least a couple of the players were not computer generated. And you can always tell and smell the computer generated opponents to actually someone who's on the plane. And that was always the last person that I had to beat was the real person, because
Right.
I could beat the game in a minute. All I got to do is bet near the total amount they have and not get the exact amount, and they will call.
Right.
It's the computer generates that.
Right.
You can't scare them. You can't scare them away unless you're all in or something like that. But anyway, that was fun. I was zombied out.
Dennis beat some bots on a plane
Yeah,
at
Yeah.
poker. Congratulations, man.
that's my personal record. I think maybe we should ask our friends what's their personal record and see.
I for sure don't have a record of get these motherfucking bots off this motherfucking plane or whatever the line is.
I take it you don't do those games. You don't like them. They're too complicated for you. It's too hard
Yeah, I'm
to
not,
figure it out.
I'm not so smart. No, most of my flights are like transatlantic, and the games I don't even know if they're connected to the other people on the plane. But just that whole like touch interface is so disgusting to me that I abstain.
Yes, I got you. I'm happy to know that something I did for 2 hours disgust you. Sorry.
Add it to the list.
Add it to the list. Indeed. So I returned to from that 23-degree weather, a whiteout, a snowy, icy rain all the way back from the airport.
Lovely.
A layer of ice on my car in the morning, so cold that all skin had to be covered.
We
live where we live.
Where I live, we're going through it's been 3 or 4 weeks of just solid fucking rain.
What temperature, though?
It's not, it doesn't get, today was the coldest and it got down to, I guess in Fahrenheit, maybe 40.
Oh, that's chilly.
But
In the rain. That's
yeah,
chilly
in the rain. But then the other day it was like at 65 or something, but still rainy and shitty. But it's just gray and dark and meh, just all the time. And update on our housing situation that our house is starting to leak in 2 different places.
New or old? New
3.
apartment or old?
New apartment, old apartment, and the space between. So in the sort of lobby area between, because we're not on the top floor, because the actual problem is a little terrace, balcony sort of thing above our top floor.
The floor of the terrace?
Yes. And so in our stairwell, there's like drops falling.
What's the surface when you're on the surface of that? What does it look like or feel like beneath your feet? The terrace floor.
The terrace, I don't know. It's not part of my. I can't get there. That's another. That belongs to another.
And so the
family.
people on the top floor have access to a rooftop terrace,
Yes,
and you don't.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And so in our stairwell, there's just this drip, drip, drip.
Yeah.
And it's been going for several months, but not as hard as it has this time when it's been super rainy. But it has gotten to the point of 5 drops per minute, we'll say.
And it's for your info, it is because of a terrace being there. It's a very simple identification and fix process, because in a terrace, there are edges and corners.
Right.
And those edges and corners are to be caulked and then recaulked. No less than every 5 years, a homeowner, I mean, not good, but a skilled homeowner would consider replacing those at year 3, depending on how they look. And in addition to that, depending on what the surface is, if it's tile, it's grouted. Grout also diminishes over time. If it is more likely tar also wears away, depending on where you're standing, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's not an expensive fix or hard to do. Not that you're going to do it, but just saying.
Right. But so it's like, it's their terrace, and the fact that their terrace is leaking doesn't affect them.
It does, of course, now that you've made it effective.
But it's like destroying the ceiling of the building on our side. And like the folks that manage this whole building are going to have to like pay for someone to fix that. Or I guess they could charge those people for fixing it, but I don't know.
Well, you've got a balcony.
Yes. But
and what is the floor made out of in the balcony?
It's tile.
Grouted tile?
Yes.
And what's beneath that in the floor below you? Another balcony?
Another balcony, yes.
So if the balcony below you were leaking,
if
the fellow below you,
right,
the fellow below you would let you know so you could fix it.
Yes.
It's no different than and the odd thing about this is that this guy's terrace it's on the roof,
right,
and he walks up to it or out to it.
Out to it,
because
their top floor is higher than ours.
But it's narrower too, more narrow.
I don't know the dimensions of their.
It has to be,
because our building has two entrances. There's 2 lobbies that come in from either side, and ours goes up to the 6th floor, and theirs goes up to the 7th floor. And they get out and live on the 7th floor, and or 8th, I think maybe, and we're here on the 6th floor.
They obviously are set back from you. Otherwise, when they walked out, and that side of your building, they would be walking out to a balcony, over your balcony, because
right, their terrace is directly over our stairwell.
Yes, and that means that their residence is offset from yours backwards.
Correct. Yes.
So now that I have that image, but the fact is that what's rotting the worst is the wood that's holding up their deck.
It's not wood. We're not in woodland over here.
It's iron.
It's all
cement and steel.
Steel and cement. Yeah.
Then the corrosion of steel, is the water dripping down colored, rust colored?
No.
Well, that's good. That's good. But nonetheless, my point is, it doesn't matter whether it's wood or concrete. The most severe damage being caused is the damage to his property, because the water is strongest at his leak. Therefore, whatever that's leaking into, all the way down to yours, the place that has the least damage is you. That water is being distributed. It could be distributed in over 100 different directions.
Correct. And in fact, the dripping in our staircase, very adjacent to that, 10 feet away from that, is my daughter's room, where she woke up one day and went to get her notes to go and study, and they were all soggy because it was fucking raining in her room.
From her closet?
No, on her desk from the ceiling, because it's right next to this particular place where the terrace above is.
When water drips underneath the edge of, in this case, either tile, it sounds like probably tile, that the grout is screwed up, but it's more likely the edges where the water's leaking. The place where the wall of the terrace, the little short wall, perhaps there's a step down to it or whatever, but wherever there's a seam is a likely culprit. But when that water goes underneath there, it attaches itself as drips along any horizontal surface.
That's what people are telling me. Yes.
And the horizontal surface can actually be somewhat, if it's even, there's no problem because gravity takes over. If, of course, it's off and it's lower, then, of course, it's even flows more. But even if it's higher, even if it's offset, the water can roll uphill depending on the force of the dripping. And when it drips down and hits another surface, that happens again and again. And any number of horizontal surfaces are the streaming of the drop. You can have a leak in a different room. I had a leak from the living room come out of the kitchen light socket. And someone said, oh, where is it leaking up above there? It's not. It's leaking 10 feet away from that vertical up. But horizontal, the problem's way over there. It's the water's attaching itself to the main beam of the house and transporting itself all the way down until it hits the plastic PVC casing of the electrical stuff. Mm-hmm. And then it goes down and it comes out there.
Water's such a bastard.
Water's such a hazard.
So that's 2 of our leaks. The third is in the new apartment, 3 feet from where I'm standing, where there's this was a thing before we painted and did everything. Like there was a clear stain on the ceiling where there was water damage. And in fact, at one point there were drops falling. And we told the builder that manages our building, we got drops here. And he went up on the roof and said, yeah, there's a chimney. I don't know if this column behind me it's not a chimney, it's a supporting column. But right next to it is a chimney for kitchen and bathroom gases and stuff to go up.
Made out of brick?
From other apartments, probably, yes. And it goes up to the roof. And so recently with all of this rain, I've started to be here at my desk and I hear a drip, drip.
Yeah.
Drip. So it's clearly falling from some height above the ceiling to hit the ceiling to make that noise. And then 5 days later, the paint starts separating and then we actually get water dripping onto the floor. So now I have a bowl here on the floor that is there to collect the few drops. There's maybe 100 drops a day or something like that. It's not that much, but like the paint is peeling and there's damage already. And he went up there and he looked at the chimney thing, and there are other chimney bits where at the top they placed the sort of vents for the air to leave are sort of like angled down at angles so that the air has to necessarily leave going down. But this one is one of the older ones where it's just even. And so if the rain is blowing sideways, as it often does, his theory is that it's entering the chimney somehow, and then somehow, but if the chimney is fucking sealed, it has to be going on the outside.
Here's the thing. The seam where the chimney goes through the roof is
right.
A matter of cutting the board, or in this case, the steel, creating a frame that surrounds the chimney. And that frame is where all of the cross beams and rafters are attached. And so it's an odd little cutout that's got to be attended to. When you get to the final layer of your roofing, is your roof in this building made out of tile or stone?
Terracotta tile.
Terracotta. So and this is the case too, where now you have grouted tile, and these are overlap tiles.
Yes.
Where they stack on top of each other. They can be brittle over time. Sun makes them weak. And
I've been up there. I have access to go out on the roof, and I've been up there and looked at the tiles, and none of them are cracked necessarily.
No, and this is my point. Where the tile meets the chimney, there's supposed to be applied to there's something called flashing, which is bendable aluminum sheeting. And we
have that in some places.
And you put the sheeting, you affix the sheeting with a very adhesive, goopy caulk that literally plasters the sheet against the chimney on an angle, whatever angle is necessary. And then your roofing is always 2 layers. When you stack, you imagine a stack of this clay roofing that you have, or easier to imagine is the stacking of tar paper shingles, where one overlaps the other, overlaps the other, overlaps the other. That space in between those 2 layers is where that flashing goes. And that flashing extends down so that it actually comes out onto the next layer of tile. So that when the water runs down the side of the chimney, it goes underneath the top tile, but flows out until a little lower. Let's say that your tile, that was weird.
Yeah, my Zoom crashed. You were saying the top tile needs to overlap the whatever.
So when the water drips off the side of the chimney, as it does, because that rain that's moving sideways is pelting that chimney, and particularly if it's made of brick, that means that there are crevices in the brick where the water it can easily escape a caulked arrangement. This is why you don't just caulk it. This is why I use flashing, is because the brick is an uneven surface and it's got to be completely covered with goop. And it works like a charm, but the diagnosis of your man is wrong. And you can just tell him to listen to this part of the podcast, send it to him in a friendly, whatever. It's no judgment here. He's just wrong. And here's the thing. A guy who owns the building doesn't necessarily know how to take care of a building.
He doesn't own the building. As the residents of the building, we are paying a company that does building administration that manages 20 buildings. And they have contracted this guy to be their builder for this particular building, as well as I suppose others.
He should know this then.
Yeah. So anyway, you should come over and I can take you up on the roof and then we can discuss it.
I'll be right there.
Okay. Well,
I'll be right there. There was some homework you were doing. What were you catching up with? Succession?
Lot.
You made the note that the woman who stars as
Shiv,
as Shiv's mother, and Logan's second wife is the same woman. No, second wife.
Okay, was the same woman from the Australia euthanasia show.
What was the name of it? It's a movie about death. So Death Becomes You or
No, it wasn't a movie. It was a series.
Of course.
We watched, I don't know. It was similar to the other Australian series that we watched. Yes, I have done a lot of homework. So I've had 2 weeks and I've watched 20 hours of Succession. I had already seen the first season, but 3 years ago. And so I started from the beginning and I watched the first season all the way through. And there were points that I remembered, but then I watched the second season all the way through, 10 episodes. And that was all new to me. And then I've just watched the first of the third season. So as we talk tonight, there are 8 in the third season. So I've just started that. And I have so many thoughts. It's very interesting to watch the richest people be miserable. The other show that I've been watching over the past 2 years that I've finally finished up until the last episode that they released is a Netflix show called The Crown. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I actually have, I think.
And it's more or less a historical fiction following the British royal family from before Queen Elizabeth became queen up until the last episode was when Margaret Thatcher finished office.
Whoa.
So that's a long time.
And you finished it. So
and it's 40, that's 40 hours. That's four 10 episode seasons.
It reminds me, did you see Meryl Streep's Thatcher?
No, I've not. But the Succession reminded me very much of The Crown because Succession is the American version of The Crown. It is super uber wealthy fucks who are so unhappy with their lives and they're bickering and this way and that way. And it just makes you glad that you're not one of those people. But also it makes you be like, damn, look at those houses they live in. Look at those.
So do you think that Logan is miserable? Logan's the only one in Logan actually isn't miserable. He's happy as he can be. And he is the only one though. He's the only one in the show who isn't miserable.
He's annoyed by his asshole kids, but so one recurring thought that I had watching Succession was, damn, they have some nice clothes. Like I've never worn a suit perfectly tailored to my shoulders and then an overcoat over that to walk down the street in Manhattan.
Yeah.
In the way that they do. And Kendall's posture is just so, like, when he's walking somewhere, he's fucking going there, and in a way that the other folks aren't.
Have you seen Jeremy Strong in other roles?
I've not. And there's a Washington Post article that was released that I was going to read and I started reading, but that I put it off because I wanted to watch more Succession to read it. But the takes I've heard from other people having read the article is that's basically who he is. He's not really acting. That's just who he fucking is.
I've read a lot about that article, and mostly it's been negative about the way it was written by people that know him best. Okay. And in fact, sounded like to one as some type of a snarky hatchet job of some kind or another. But so these characters are riveting.
Yes.
And the acting is riveting, but they're so unlikable. Shiv may be the most unlikable character I've seen in a series in a long time. And there's nothing about what goes on with her that is anything other than just vulgar to me. And she's just awful. And while Logan's awful, I enjoy watching Logan. I can't say that about her. And now I just caught up last night. So I am at a very critical time. Leave it at that.
Every time it's critical time in this.
But in looking backwards, there are more or less pivotal times.
Sure.
And we are at a peak here. We are at a peak. Enough said. But you have a lot to look forward to. But I've also seen interviews. I think you sent them to me.
I sent some, yeah.
Of the character who plays Greg, who's one of the most likable characters in any series anywhere.
He's he's so much taller than everyone.
He says, one of his lines that made me laugh out loud, because he never completes a sentence. He's always bumbling over his own words. And he said it was about one of these women that he wanted to date, and he was reaching over his station. And he said, it's just that I'm not sure if maybe my length won't be a detriment. And it's such a funny way to put it. The writers are very funny.
Yeah, the dialogue is pretty fantastic. And yeah, in those interviews I sent you, I did not know that Shiv was Australian.
No, and nor did I know that Tom was British.
Exactly.
And what's interesting is since then, I've seen this fresh episode, and it is the most perfectly undetectable thing I've ever seen. And even in whispers and whatnot, and Tom, I find immensely enjoyable. His character has got some funny stuff. Him and Greg's interaction is nothing short of Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah,
I mean, it is the comic relief where he sneaks into Greg's office and he puts a Tum on the counter and says, "You'll need to take this if things get dicey." And when Greg looks at me, he says, "It's cyanide." And Greg swallows nervously, and then Tom bursts out laughing.
Yeah, that relationship is really fantastic. And Roman, man, Kieran is like Casey Affleck in that he's such a better actor than his more famous brother.
Not to diminish Ben, and certainly I'd love to diminish McCulkey. He was never an actor. He was a mimic.
Right.
He was never an actor. Ben's got some chops. But here's the thing: is that I will tell you this, that the most powerful scene of the series just happened this week. No spoiler here. And he had no dialogue. None. And it was some of the most powerful acting I've seen in this series, which is nothing but powerful acting. Yeah. There is no weakness in this acting. It's astounding to me. There's nothing about it that I criticize.
Yeah, the Roman character is so
bizarre,
just a freaky, and how he's all like weirdly sexual with Jerry, but then he has a girlfriend that he doesn't have sex with, and
it's just they've never shown.
No, his tall blonde girlfriend.
Did they show her early in the series?
Yeah, in the second season, he was dating this woman, and they were very open about the fact that they'd never slept together after dating for.
Oh, I do remember that. I can barely remember what she looked like, but
tall, blonde, curly hair. Yeah,
curly hair,
curly hair, and. She's the one that at the end of season 1, Tom, when they were in a bachelor party for Tom, where they were in this like underground sex dungeon sort of place, and he thought that there were no rules for your bachelor party, and she gave him a blowjob and then spit his load back into his mouth and he swallowed it.
Who's this? Tom,
yeah. And then immediately all of his siblings knew, and like when they were waiting for the cars to come pick them up, they were like, "So, Tom, I heard you."
His in-laws, not his siblings.
No, his siblings.
Tom has no siblings in the series.
Oh, yeah, sorry, in-laws, yes.
Yeah, sorry. Don't be insistent.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I do remember.
What a bizarro fucking series. Yes, yeah. But it's a weird. And then like they go off and just their vacations are like taking fucking helicopters to yachts and stuff, and it just makes you wonder how that, because there are people that live that way. And,
sure.
And what their lives must be like, and how their daily worries are: will we close this $1 billion deal or not? But they've never cleaned a fucking dish in their life.
So who are they? Who is the series styled after? Who is the media mogul who Logan resembles?
It's pretty obviously Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
But just because they're conservatively bent and wanting to take over the local news stations and stuff, but like but between themselves, they're not that political. They don't talk about politics. It's just about how can we control stuff and get politicians elected that will benefit us. That's all they say. They don't talk about more depth than that.
Are you in the presidential election stage of the?
No, I'm just starting episode 2 of season 3.
Okay.
And then there's Connor, poor fucking Connor. He's the oldest, right? And he's
Alan Ruck, the actor from
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Ferris Bueller. And I've seen things since then, but nothing that, like this one, eliminates my memory of that other character. In every other role he did, all I saw was Ferris Bueller's Day Off character.
Right.
This one is not that.
Hey, speaking of 80s media, I showed my kids and my wife an 80s classic last night, Stand By Me.
Oh, wow. With good River Phoenix,
Will Wheaton. And what I did not realize when I started was the bully antagonist is Kiefer Sutherland.
Yes.
And what I would never ever have remembered was that Will Wheaton is the narrator who is like narrating from the future where he's an adult. But his brother that died before the action takes place, like in a Jeep accident or something, when there's flashbacks to his brother's played by a very young John Cusack, which was very strange.
He was killed in the workshop accident.
In a Jeep crash or something. But I remember what that movie gets. Okay. this is one of these movies. There's a lot of movies that are set with kids 30 years before they are released because they want to appeal to the 44-year-olds that remember that time and those songs and that era in a way that makes them nostalgic. And this was very much that. And the soundtrack is just fantastic. It's all the good 1950s pop songs.
Kiefer Sutherland set the stage for his remarkable number of evil characters.
Because then he went on to be a Western baddie.
Yeah, and yes.
Young something or other, Young Guns.
Yeah, returning from the Civil War, that one, with his father.
But what I really love about this movie is how true it gets the relationships between 12-year-old boys.
Yeah.
And they're all they're speaking in a language that we don't speak anymore because they're using 1950s isms that don't really even resonate with me.
They do with me. That's exactly when I grew up.
Right.
And I bore a resemblance to Wheaton's character. In fact, a skinny boy.
But it was
handsome, just gorgeous boy.
Yes. Yeah. River Phoenix was by far the prettiest of the boys.
And held it together remarkably.
Sadly, it seems like River Phoenix, the actor, had a pretty bad teenage life in Hollywood. Like it seemed like there are reports that he was pretty much raped and taken advantage of and stuff. And that's how he developed his drug problem. And that's why he eventually died at age 23.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that's tragic.
And it makes the movie all the more touching. And it started as touching.
And there's actually a line in the movie where he says, "I'm not going to live past 20," which is just like, fuck. My 8-year-old son started off thinking this is slow and dumb, all old movies are. But by the end, he liked it and got the idea of, because it's just boys hanging around and calling each other pussies and all other sorts of words and just being boys in a way that is so true. If you took a group of good friend 12-year-old boys and sent them out on a mission for a day or 2 days, they would act like that.
When I was that age, when I was 10, 11, 12, there was a neighbor of ours named Gary, whose mother worked on a farm. And regardless of the season, there was work to be done. And she ended up wanting to, and being able to take her son, Gary, to the farm and have him with her. And then as he got older, Gary was allowed to bring a friend with him. And we had 3 brothers. I had 2 brothers growing up, 3 of us. My youngest brother didn't come until 12. He was the surprise, actually, 12 years after the fact of the 3 brothers growing up together. And any one of us might be invited. And so who was invited? I often, as it would be, I was not invited at least 2 out of 3 times. But if it became that Gary would be friendlier with one of my other 2 brothers, then they would be invited. And so it became a childhood thing of would I be invited or not. But when I was invited, I got to plan for the event by packing a knapsack and putting ropes in it so we could scale down the side of a hill that was there, and a day of it out on the farm. And one time, for whatever reason, there were more than 2 of us, and we took these bales of straw and rearranged them so that there were tunnels and a periscope type pop up top where you could climb out, but there were at least 3 entrances, and we played tag. And as 10, 11-year-old boys were playing tag and getting all scratched up in and out of the straw, we started swearing and using this profane language. And little did we know that Gary's mother was nearby.
Oh, no.
And listening to the profanity.
Oh, fuck.
And I remember this torturous lunch where we had the blankets spread out and everybody had sandwiches. And Gary's mother ate silently, eating her sandwiches, weeping and crying ever so lightly for the entire lunch. She was so disappointed. And it was actually, I believe that it was never actually, it became an issue as to who started this, as opposed to who became involved. And I vaguely remember that it was me, but I don't remember for sure. But I also vaguely remember that it seemed that I wasn't invited anymore, because the fact that I vaguely remember that was also vaguely remembered by Gary, who reported it to his mother. Oh, Lord.
12-year-old boys swearing?
Oh, God.
That must be the first time in history.
Swearing and spitting. Spitting was a big thing.
One detail that I loved that I had forgotten about was, so these 4 boys decide to go out for 48 hours on a mission and they pack their suitcase and their canteen, and they're out walking on the railroad tracks. And then one of them says, I'm kind of hungry. And they look around and no one has thought to bring any food. Like they just, as a 12-year-old boy, you just don't think that food is.
Y'all have a bedroll?
Yeah, they had little rolls.
A blanket and maybe just a blanket.
Yeah. But it was like when you're a 12-year-old boy and you live at home, and when it's time to eat, just the food appears.
Did they have a candy bar between them?
No candy.
Nothing?
They sat down and they pooled all their money, and they came out with $2.07. And they were like, okay, we can buy some food with this.
Should have bought Spam.
And they went to the store and bought, I don't know what they bought, because that was the moment when I had to go to the kitchen to make the microwave popcorn. But yeah, but like every scene it's one of those movies where if you've seen it enough times, one scene ends and then the next one starts. And as the viewer, you're like, oh, this is the scene where that happens.
Yeah.
Like when he starts telling the story about the boy at the pie eating contest that is so angry with all of the people that call him lardass all the time, that he drinks a bunch of castor oil before the pie eating contest and then pukes out everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But it's such an examination of the 12-year-old boy mind. I have a 12-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy. And it's the 12-year-old girl mind is not like the 12-year-old boy mind at all. But as soon as they were walking down the tracks and they got to the long bridge where they were like, when was the next train supposed to come? My son, who has seen enough content and knows all the Hollywood tricks and stuff, was immediately said, they're going to start walking across the bridge and the train's going to come, because like he knows that's the thing that you do with this particular setup, and was very accurate with that. But anyway, that happened.
And isn't it true that anytime you hear the song, you're taken right back to the movie? Right back to the movie.
No. I'm not so much.
Why? Huh? That's odd.
Yeah, because I knew the song before I knew the movie, I think. And
I can't hear the song without picturing the boys walking down the railroad tracks.
But the song's not part of the movie. The song is at the very entrance of the movie. There's an orchestral version of the chord changes going very slowly. And until the credits, they don't play the actual song. So it's not really part of the movie. And choosing that
I need to get clear about this.
Choosing that for the title of the movie is, yes, go.
I got a question, 3-part question.
Yes.
When you describe a movie, do you describe an event that begins after the beginning and somehow ends before the ending? Is that what you call a movie? That it doesn't include the opening music or the closing credits music, or not to mention the title? It doesn't include that because you don't believe the movie really begins until the acting begins. You don't call the opening credits.
I consider the whole thing the movie.
Oh, so then I believe you might have misspoke.
Okay. It wasn't a theme throughout the movie.
It wasn't a central aspect of the movie. It was mindful, of course, that it's nothing less than the title.
True.
Which one might consider a pretty strong indication of the importance of the song by the same name.
Correct, but there's nothing about the song. There's nothing. I guess "Stand by Me" is "Please Be My Companion Through Hard Times" or whatever.
But the whole movie, teenage loyalty is about prepubescent loyalty.
But the song is about romance to me.
Yeah, I think romance to me is about loyalty. So romantic loyalty as opposed to prepubescent loyalty, which might have a little romance involved, little boy crushes, and you're going to be this boy's best friend or whatever. So I don't know, bro. I don't know. I'm not with you on this. There are songs that create an emotion, which I think in this case were purely associated with the movie. The emotion of that tune, perhaps, is to move your way a bit. It's just in spite of some of the words of the song.
Okay, the song predates the movie by 30 years. It was a pop hit for 30 years. And then they made the movie and they called it that because it was set 30 years earlier and they were using 30 years ago pop songs, Rockin' Robin and Lollipop and those sort of things. And it was Stand By Me is a nice camaraderie song, but I don't know. The choice of using the title of being that song, the movie wasn't based around, I don't know.
So Kiefer Sutherland's character wanted to completely annihilate this group of boys who were sworn to secrecy
Right.
in nothing less than an oath of loyalty. And in fact, what they were saying to each other was, no matter what, I will stand by you. We will stand together. We will stand by each other. I will stand by you. You stand by me on this amazing event. Is that we?
And yet the word stand was never used, that was such an easy. They could have been at any particular moment. They could have looked at each other and said, "Look, if shit gets real, will you stand by me?" They could have said that. That
would have been cheesy. Thank God the guy who wrote the screenplay wasn't cheesy.
Rob Reiner, by the way.
Oh, so right.
I don't know. I feel like they might have chosen the name of the movie after they made the movie.
So I'm just curious, because you obviously have opinions that are somewhat strong about this, is that I need to know, what would you have named the movie? Now, you don't have to answer now. Maybe you come back next, but I do want to consider. I got to tell you something, that you wearing that Christmas hat.
Boys and leeches. That leech scene. Is.
Have you ever had a leech?
I've never had a leech. Not in your underpants.
I have. Yes, I have.
You've had a leech down there?
Yes. And when you pull them off, there is blood. It is the worst possible thing. And that scene, I believe that I saw the movie years after I had the leeches, because the leeches happened, in fact, when I was somehow wallowing in some muddy water somewhere in a pond and in the mud, splashing in the mud, and then just diving into the colder, clearer, deeper water to get the mud off me.
As one does.
As one would. I remember as a boy kicking mud all over my face and wanting it to dry in the sun so that it could be broken off and chiseled off like some frantic.
You still have got a piece right there where you're on your upper.
Oh yeah, it'll fall off soon. We have reached the witching hour. I must move on to the next enterprise. It's so good catching up. I do think, I don't remember, did we talk about you at some point catching up with Curb Your Enthusiasm?
That's such a tall mountain to.
But you don't have to catch up, because every episode is independent from the other one. You really don't need. It's not a progression. It's not like
it's episodic, like Seinfeld.
The only plot is that it's the life of these characters, and everyone is just a glimpse into a particular day in the life of Larry David, which I think we talked about, the fact that is the character from Seinfeld.
Yes.
So, we did talk about that. It was you and I, Jason Alexander, I think, played it.
And yeah, that's a series. I don't know how many hours of that has been.
It's 11 seasons. So there's 9 per.
But they're shorter episodes. They're not hour episodes. Yeah.
So that's 99 episodes. So that's 45 hours. Or no, almost 50.
Yeah.
49 hours, whatever. I'm caught up. I never stopped though. I don't know that I've ever missed one. I think though, maybe I must have started binging. Doesn't seem like it's been 11 years since I've been watching it, but I guess it has. Good Lord. Who knows?
Time flies, man.
So I think I'm homebound tonight. It's 18 degrees out. I have a project. I'll take a couple pictures of it and show you. We'll talk about it next episode. Next episode, we'll look for the tool of the day.
Hey, I have some news too.
Oh, okay.
I'm going away for Christmas.
Where?
I'm traveling with my family and my in-laws. We're going to have a warm Christmas in the Canary Islands.
Oh my word.
We're spending all of our patreon.com/happy hour money to go and have a once in a lifetime, because it's so fucking expensive. We're going to spend from Christmas to the New Year
Good for you.
In the Canary Islands.
That's going to be a thrill.
Yeah, I don't know if you know where the Canary Islands are, but they are way fucking far south.
Yeah.
They're down by Africa. I don't know why they're part of Spain, but they're down in the tropics.
Does it being part of Spain make it more or less affordable?
I don't have to show a passport.
Oh, there you go.
And they speak Spanish. I'm sure all the signs I've seen when I've been street mapping around are in English, because it's where all the Europeans go for. It's like the European Caribbean.
So is that affecting our recording schedule?
I don't know. There's going to be one Wednesday when we're there. I might want to try it, because they're 1 hour closer to you guys.
The 29th is a Wednesday. So
yeah, that I'm going to be there then.
That's New Year's
Eve.
Eve.
Eve is the 30th. So that's Eve.
Well, so on that incredibly clever note, the two of us just bantering about it.
It's banter, baby.
This explains to our most recent. Yeah, so that white cap, often when I look at it, the white band below your red cap often looks, because it blends with your wall somewhat.
Yes.
It looks like you're missing the middle part of your head, which is a little bit
not inaccurate.
A little bit unnerving. Well, I'm out, my brother, my friend.
I will see you next time.
So good to be back.
Peace, bro.
Peace
Happy birthday.
out. Hey, thanks. 68. Oh, Lord.
Okay, that's it for episode number 136. You can find the show notes with the links to the interviews with the Succession cast and things like that at happyhour.fm/136. And all that money Dennis won on the plane at poker is not real money, so you can go and give us actual real money at patreon.com/happyhour. We would love it. And we'll see you next week.